anyway, congratulations to everybody who remembered to change their clocks.
Good morning, Bob. Welcome, welcome.
And Terry and Mary, welcome, Terry and Mary. We're glad to have you here.
Dave Dorley, welcome, good morning.
Chuck Battaglia, welcome, Chuck. Good morning to you. Kylie and George, welcome to Kylie and George on this beautiful sunny morning.
And welcome to the Ballards. Good morning, Ballard family. And Alan Metcalf, welcome, welcome.
Phyllis is here, the rest of the Disick family in the chat.
And there's Ken Manley. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning, Ken Manley. How nice to have you here. Okay, we don't want to confuse anybody, but in about 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to start the prelude early because we have a special piece of music written by our own Jessie Downs. It's a selection from an instrumental version of a selection from her upcoming opera. And it's a little longer than our usual prelude. So we're going to get it started around 10:25. So don't be confused by that. Christine Beregi, Christine B. Welcome, Christine. We're glad to have you here, even if I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name. And hi, Carol. Hi. I know, that's an old joke. You're tired of it, I'm sure.
Sally Metzger, good morning. Ted and Sharon. Tony Keller, good morning, good morning.
Don Bear, welcome, Don.
Good morning to the Harrises. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And Sharon, good morning, Sharon.
John Rex, good morning, John. Glad to have you with us this morning.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our sacred Zoom space. This is a place where we can leave the noise of the world behind to make some noise of our own and where we join in contemplation. So welcome, welcome, come in, come in. It is always so good to be together. Our church building is closed right now for safety's sake, but church is alive and flourishing right here on Zoom. I'm Eve Holberg. I am co-worship associate this morning with the Reverend Fran Manley. We are tag teaming on this beautiful, almost spring morning and are delighted today to welcome to our virtual pulpit the Reverend Heather Rion-Starr. Reverend Heather is a lifelong Unitarian Universalist, originally from the Pacific Northwest. Today, she joins us from Connecticut, where she serves congregations in the central and eastern parts of the state. Heather and her spouse, Kathy, have two young children, Robin and Braden, with whom they have gotten to spend a whole lot more time at home this past year.
Good morning, everyone. Let's start with a couple of Zoom worship things. One, this is a webinar, so we can't see or hear you, and you can't hear or see each other. You can see and hear Reverend Heather and Eve and me. We know you're here because we can see the list of names of everyone who is signed on. You can chat all through the service and after the service during the virtual fellowship hour, sort of like passing notes in class, except that you're allowed to do it. Note, when you use the chat, make sure you're addressing not only the panelists, but also the attendees. After the service, you can sign off from this webinar and then sign back on to a Zoom fellowship time in which you can see and hear each other. The link for that meeting is in the newsletter, the weekly e-blast, in the chat, and on the last slide of this service. And finally, captioning is now available. If that would help you, there's a control on the bottom of your screen to turn it on and adjust the size if you need to. As always, special thanks go to Josh Disick, John Petroselli, Justin DeClean, Karen Streech, Bobby Withrow, as well as Dan Basson and all our music staff who enrich our worship together every Sunday.
And now, a few announcements. You have an opportunity to offer input to our proposed relational covenant. Hi, Carol, a trained restorative practice circle leader, will facilitate one more restorative practice conversation about our draft relational covenant tomorrow evening, March 15th at 5 p.m. Your input is crucial to this process. The Zoom address for this conversation is in the e-blast, the newsletter, and the chat.
Our Universal Access and Inclusion Ministry team is holding a discussion on the book Held by Reverend Barbara Myers. You may remember that Reverend Barbara led us in worship in January and encouraged us to create a congregation that is more welcoming and supportive of people struggling with mental health difficulties. The Zoom discussion will be this coming Thursday, March 18th at 7 p.m. Again, you can find more details about this discussion and the Zoom link in the e-blast, the newsletter, and in the chat. And you can contact Sarah Martin for a copy of the book.
The Justice Ministry team sends thanks to our generous congregation. In January, we raised $407.50 for Home to help them continue their mission to promote the value of diversity and ensure all people an equal opportunity to live in housing and communities of their choice. We also collected boxes and boxes of socks to donate to Friends of the Night People. Thank you all so much. The Justice Ministry team is inviting everyone to join them on Zoom next Sunday, March 21st at 1 p.m. for a discussion on a chapter from the book Crazy Like Us, The Globalization of the American Psyche. The group will be discussing the chapter on trauma treatment in Sri Lanka after the 2004 tsunami. Participants are asked to read the chapter and to consider how we can apply cultural awareness to community healing as we navigate our way through the shared stressors of our times. See details in the e-blast, the newsletter, and the chat.
And one more. You've heard of Secret Santas, I know. Well, this year, you can be a secret Easter bunny. Although Easter is April 4th, we're celebrating the coming of spring all month long. You can exchange cards and tiny baskets of treats every week of April. Just contact Reverend Joan by next Sunday, March 21st, and she will get you a secret Easter bunny pal. As always, you can find more details in the newsletter and the e-blast. It'll be fun for all ages and the whole family. And just in case all of this isn't enough for you, be sure to check the newsletter and the weekly e-blast for information on lots of other things happening on our Zoom platform. And now, let's worship.
Good morning, and thank you so much to Eve and Reverend Fran for your welcome. It is so good to be with you this morning and to hear about all the great things you have going on. I have a feeling that anybody who's involved in the Crazy Like Us book discussion will particularly enjoy what I'm sharing, the stories I'll be sharing with you this morning. I'll need to look for that book myself. It is so good to be with you, and it's a delight to get to visit with you all and be in Reverend Joan Montagnis's pulpit. Reverend Joan and I know each other from our years on the West Coast, and I have fond memories from a now very long ago time, it seems, of strolling together along the Puget Sound. But here we are now in 2021, online. I enjoyed listening to this congregation service last Sunday on It's Been a Year. So I'm right there with you in spirit, reflecting on what an intense, tumultuous, and profound year this past year has been. One of my ways of coping has always been to think about and learn from those who have fewer life comforts and privileges than I do. And so I will be sharing with you this morning some of my learnings from our family's trip to northern India in November 2019. We all have various ways we put the ups and downs of our lives into perspective. Perhaps you start your morning out by bringing to mind a few things you have to be grateful for as this new day begins. Perhaps you wrestle with health challenges, and so days in which you can get around without being in pain are clear and marvelous blessings. I hope you are all feeling the percolating promise of spring, even though temps are still in the 30s, where most of you are. Each of you, each of us, bring our own stories, struggles, and yearnings to this online gathering today. Let this be a time when you notice your feelings and thoughts as they rise and create space for the feelings and thoughts of those journeying along with us during this service. We've just reached 100 of you logging in, and that is just so marvelous to see and feel the connection of all of us together here. Let us be assured of at least this common thread among us, our desire to be present to one another, to connect with some sense of beauty that is larger than ourselves, and to find ways to support and encourage each other onward. Come, let us open our hearts to soaking in the words, music, stories, and sharing of this time. Come, let us worship together. Please join me now in bringing a candle or chalice near you. And join me in just a moment in the chalice lighting words of this congregation. Up there on your screen. We gather in loving community, inspiring one another to transform ourselves to create a more just and compassionate world. Our opening song is the very first one in our Gray Singing the Living tradition hymnal, May Nothing Evil Cross This Door. I hope you'll join me in this sung blessing for whatever physical space you have around you this day. I did have the opportunity to go to the Philippines and Northern India a year and a half ago now with my two kids who were then 7 and 2 years old. I still kind of can't believe it, but thank goodness we did seize that moment, right? We were visiting Universalists in the Philippines and Unitarian Universalists in Northern India. And so along our way, I was on the lookout for children's books, and I was introduced by a parent friend who lives in New Delhi to the Farmer Falgu stories. In this one, Farmer Falgu sets out on a journey to find any more peaceful place than his own noisy farm. Surely anywhere else would be more quiet and more serene. This is Farmer Falgu Goes on a Trip by Chitra Soundar and Kanika Nair. Cluck, cluck, moo, moo, ruff, ruff, quack, quack. Farmer Falgu's farm was noisy. What a racket, said Farmer Falgu. I'm going to look for silence. Farmer Falgu cleaned his cart. He washed his oxen. He packed some lunch. Farmer Falgu set off on a trip to find silence. On his way, Farmer Falgu met an old man. Please, can I ride with you? Asked the old man. My sack is very heavy. Climb on, said Farmer Falgu. Then they set off. The old man took out his drum and started to play. Dum, da-dum, dum, dum went the drum. Trot, trot went the oxen. The old man sang a funny song. Farmer Falgu forgot about silence and joined along. Just after noon, they passed a snake charmer on the way. Can I get a ride too? He asked. Hop on, said Farmer Falgu. Move, move, said the snake charmer. The old man moved inside. Farmer Falgu, the old man, and the snake charmer set off again. Fee, fee, played the snake charmer on his pipe. Dum, 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 da, dum went the drums. Trot, trot, trot went the oxen. The old man sang another song. Farmer Falgu forgot all about silence and sang along. The sun had begun to set. A dance troupe waved from the roadside. Will you take us to the next town? Asked the dancers. "Jump in," said Farmer Falgu. "Move, move, move," said the dancers. The snake charmer shuffled aside. The old man moved aside. Farmer Falgu, the old man, the snake charmer, and the dance troupe set off again. Tap, 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 tap. The dancers tapped their feet. Fee, fee, played the snake charmer on their pipe. Dum, da, dum, dum went the drums. Trot, 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 trot went the oxen. The old man began a new song. Farmer Falgu forgot all about silence and chorused along. The moon was out when they reached the next town. The dancers jumped off near the fair. The snake charmer got down at the town square. The old man, too, parted ways near the riverside. Farmer Falgu set off again to look for silence. The night was quiet. This is silence, thought Farmer Falgu, just the thing I've been looking for. He stopped his cart and closed his eyes. He listened for the quiet night. As he listened some more, he heard crickets chirping, frogs croaking, the wind whispering. He heard rustling leaves, grunting lizards, and sleepy bird calls. Farmer Falgu groaned. Was he ever going to find silence? He thought about his farm, where wind rustled by the hay bales and the chickens dropped their eggs and the pigs sloshed in their pens. "Ah," said Farmer Falgu with a smile, "my farm is not noisy. It is happy." He turned his cart around and set off home. Trot, trot, trot went the oxen. La, 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 sang Farmer Falgu. And thus ends our story.
Each week, our congregation takes a good portion of our Sunday morning offering and gives it away to a social justice cause outside our four walls. This month, we are supporting the good work of the Unitarian Universalist Association Disaster Relief Fund. The UUA Disaster Relief Fund supports congregations and communities in time of need. Grants include repairing damage to buildings, relocation, damage to members of and friends' homes, and support of local partner organizations that provide services to the community at large. Within the last year, grants have been extended to support COVID-19 relief work, supporting collaborative approaches between congregations and community organizations. You can use PayPal by going to our website, www.buffalouu.org, and clicking on the blue donate button. Or you can send a check by mail to Unitarian Universalist Church of Buffalo, 695 Elmwood Avenue, Buffalo, New York, 14222. You can also arrange a regular automatic deposit with your bank. If yours is a gift to our Share the Plate ministry, please write share on the memo line, and it will be shared between the UUA Disaster Relief Fund and the church operating budget. If yours is a welcome gift to our congregation, please write Pledge 2021 on the memo line. Either way, please write UUCB on the important line, and we'll do the bookkeeping.
Our reading for two voices this morning is entitled Bold and Courageous Together. It's by the Reverend Erica Hewitt, adapted by Reverend Heather. The word courage comes from the Latin cor, which means heart. According to poet Mark Nepo, the original use of the word courage meant to stand by one's core, a striking concept that reinforces the belief found in almost all traditions that living from the center is what enables us to face whatever life has to offer.
To encourage means to hearten, to impart strength and confidence. This is our work as a religious community, to encourage one another to be bold in engaging the world around us, as well as what scares us internally, to give one another the confidence and heart to live as fully as possible.
With full hearts, we affirm our relationships with one another. We recognize our agency and our connective power, and we accept our responsibility to be bold and courageous.
Every week, and sometimes every day, we co-create this community anew. We celebrate all that we are, all that we have done together, and all that we will be as our shared ministry encourages those within and beyond our building, our congregation, our city, our interconnected web, our shared world.
Thank you to Eve and Reverend Fran for sharing this reading with you all. Will you all join me now in the spirit of centering prayer? Spirit of life, of compassion, of determined joy. Help us to see the possibilities for connection even among all our feelings of separateness and sadness. Help us to pause and breathe in deep gratitude for all the gritty details of our lives, the to-do lists that structure our days, the many ways we can and do reach out and connect with each other. Yes, there are events in our lives and in the lives of this community that lift our spirits this morning. We are thankful for each and all of those blessings. And yes, there is sorrow, loss, and the heavy reminders of our eternal human vulnerabilities. When any of you find your heart is feeling heavy, please reach out and connect with someone else in this community. When you are feeling joy, let that good energy inspire and energize others around you. We bring one another along on this shared journey of being alive at this time, and we marvel at the vast, sparkling, intricate kaleidoscope of feeling and experience that is all our lives. May you each and all be nourished by this sacred time, the acknowledgement of both beauty and sadness, the commitment and recommitment to begin again and again with each day, each hour, each breath. In Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh's words, in the sunlight of awareness, each thought, each action becomes sacred. May this always be so. And now let us fill this sacred space with the names of our loved ones, those suffering in sorrow and those celebrating in joy. Each name a breath, each breath a prayer. You are invited to write the names on your heart this morning into the chat. We hold your sharings with tenderness, those typed in and those still weighing quietly on your hearts. And we share the common commitment to witness to each other's lives and losses today and in all the days ahead. In the words of this congregation, the breath of nature is upon us. The spirit of life is within us. The community of love is among us. So be it, blessed be, and let us all together say, Amen. When my family and I returned from our big sabbatical trip, literally around the world in November 2019, we brought home, among other things, the words of Reverend Nangroy Suting, Minister and General Secretary of the Unitarian Union of North India. Reverend Nangroy writes, "We light our divine chalice to enlighten our souls and all our thoughts. We light our chalice to inspire, to feel its warmth and brighten the spirits of those who receive it. Let this light empower and strengthen us to move ahead and to attain the ultimate goal of a contented life within ourselves." Many times since our return, I have pondered these last words. Let this light empower us to attain the ultimate goal of a contented life within ourselves. As a lifelong Unitarian Universalist raised in the United States, I've been raised in a culture that I regularly realize focuses on achievement and accomplishment. Just like the next person immersed in our capitalist consumerist country, I can find myself thinking I should be doing better financially, should be more successful, or getting paid better, or find a better arrangement of variables in my life. That constant striving, that continual looking for the next right step up on the ladder of achievement is embedded into the standard kid in the United States upbringing these days, I think. Even the refrain of the canonical 1970s era song by Sweet Honey in the Rock insists, "We who believe in freedom cannot rest." There is so much work to be done, so much change to be brought about. Nothing is all right as it is. Perhaps I'm exaggerating a bit, but you get my point. Just 16 months ago now, I was in northern India, so profoundly aware of all the things I could see that were not up to the standards of the United States. And Reverend Nangroy, the minister who so generously and humbly had us over to his home for dinner, wrote these words that encourage me to attain the ultimate goal of a contented life within myself. Why does that sound so hard and so unusual within Unitarian Universalism to be contented with our lives as they are? This is not an either or, one of my mentors cautioned me. We all need both to practice acceptance, breathing in what is, and perseverance, keeping our shoulder to the wheel of our ideals, what we know can be better for everyone. Finding the happy medium between these two poles of acceptance and perseverance and striving is the work of the human spirit. Finding the happy medium between these two poles is our Unitarian Universalist spiritual work. There were awkward moments in our whirlwind visit to Northeast India, moments when it wasn't clear exactly what to talk about. I had brought some Connecticut things to give to Reverend Nangroy's wife, Bari, who had been preparing all afternoon for our visit. And while giving her these things, some local honey, some postcards, I realized in the moment that they were all the wrong things to bring, but I hadn't known what to bring. And I may well have said without thinking, maybe you can come and visit us in Connecticut someday, wanting to extend the same hospitality that we were so graciously being shown. Reverend Nangroy, oh so gently, said quietly, "It is very difficult for us to come to the United States, even just to visit." In his role as an active member of the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists, the challenges of travel, even pre-pandemic, just so that he might participate in a week-long international conference, were and are real and significant. The economic inequality between our two countries, our two realities, is so substantial that the cost of visiting and being in the United States is pretty much prohibitive all on its own, even without factoring in visa and immigration hoops. Similarly, the staff of the family that we were visiting with in Delhi gently said to me, "I would need to be hired by a family such as yours in order to ever go to and see the US." And hiring anyone to work for me in a daily domestic way seemed otherworldly indeed. Chance privilege is an awkward, massive, and undeniable barrier. Columnist Dave Iverson has written, "Our luck is largely the fruit of random selection. If you were to press a global reset button and everyone on the planet were reborn into different circumstances, who'd be lucky then?" There is so much that is purely by chance. By chance am I here with you all in Buffalo now. By chance will I likely have access to a COVID-19 vaccine later this month, while others around the world wait. Wherever we are, though, we need to come to all the work that there is to do from a place of gratitude, a grounded place within us that has found and keeps trying to find some contentment right where we are. Even before the pandemic, it gave me a lot to think about to have made these new friends and meet these new colleagues in Northern India who have cared deeply their whole lives about the same religious freedom that I do, yet live in dramatically different circumstances and with radically different constraints. We came back to the US on Thanksgiving Day, 2019, right around the same time you all were listening to that beautiful piece we heard earlier in your sanctuary in Buffalo. And then March 2020, the pandemic landed in our country, our lives, our communities. In the pivoting scramble of those first days and weeks, my spouse and I were suddenly home 24/7 with our two young kids and painfully aware that we didn't really have any home office space set up in our small house. Feeling at first like I needed to still be standing when preaching, I set up a tower of boxes on a chair in our basement as a makeshift desk. So it was that I was awkwardly typing on my laptop on top of our washing machine when I opened up an email from Reverend Nangroy with his and their concerned thoughts and best wishes as the impact of COVID-19 in the United States made international news. The irony of the whole situation really struck me. I had gone to Northern India and journeyed out to visit the Unitarian Children's Village, and I had been wide-eyed and amazed at how rural and remote it all felt. At the village, they have to wash all their clothes in a small stream down a steep ravine and then hang dry them. Water is limited, so the children and youth are only permitted to shower once a week. And now here I was, just 4 months later, my laptop precariously balanced in our poorly lit basement, receiving the kind sympathies and concern of those we'd just visited about the state of things in our country. I'm pretty certain that Reverend Nangroy, his family, and others we'd gotten to know during that part of our trip were quite happy not to be in the United States now. To me, this was both humbling and important. We never know when what we take for granted today will be elusive tomorrow. And what inspires contentment, happiness, and gratitude in us is not at all based on relative financial wealth. Self-determination, finding one's authentic path of contentment right where one already is, finding both contentment and challenge in one's home place is core to the North Indian Unitarian story. The Kazi Hills Unitarians frequently name and celebrate as their founder a man I confess I had not heard of before our trip, Hajam Kishore Singh. Singh grew up in Jawai, a town in this mountainous northeasternmost corner of India where the Jaintia Hills and the Kazi Hills meet. His father was a police sergeant, and his community of Kazi people, a tribe that had come to India from Southeast Asia, had their own non-Hindu religion featuring belief in a creator god and whose shamanistic practice was based upon the appeasing of good, evil, and ancestor spirits. Singh attended schools run by Welsh Calvinistic Methodist missionaries in the region, and at age 15 converted to that Welsh Methodist Reform faith. But by college age, he was a questioning member of that church, doubting Orthodox Christianity, an experience with which I'm sure some of you can relate. British Unitarian Margaret Barr later summarized stories of Singh that she heard and wrote that he felt and declared that the message of damnation and salvation by going to a certain church and profession of a certain creed, was incompatible with the teachings of Jesus that he read for himself in the Gospels. Spencer Levan writes in a biography of Hajam Kishore Singh in the Dictionary of Unitarian Universalist Biography, an online resource of the UU History and Heritage Society, that young Singh had reached classic Unitarian convictions and had begun appealing to others to see their merit without knowing that anyone else in the world thought as he did. When he was 25, Singh learned of Charles Appleton Dall, an American Unitarian minister working and living in Calcutta. There soon ensued an enthusiastic exchange of letters between the two men. Dall sent Singh a volume of the writings of William Ellery Channing, and Singh suddenly understood that many others called Unitarians shared his faith. In 1887, Singh led the first real church service of what would become the North Indian Unitarian Union, or the Kazi Hills Unitarians, in his home in Jawai. One woman and two men joined him as the first members and leaders of this new church. From those humble beginnings and their continuing research, writing, reflection, relationship building, heartfelt discussions, and outreach, the congregation grew, a church building was acquired, and an elementary school opened. And most of the Unitarian ministers that we visited worked as ministers for free and as teachers in these Unitarian schools during the week. That was their day job, was teaching in these Unitarian grounded schools and supported schools. 132 years later, there are close to 50 Unitarian congregations spread throughout the Kazi Hills and beyond, and estimates of some 10,000 members. They count the children and youth among them of all ages who have grown up in this faith. And there are many different churches, large and small. So this one is one of the little ones just outside of Shillong, just on the edge of Shillong, that I went and found at the end of a road in a densely populated neighborhood. So it was just sweet to see the range of the many different kinds of churches there in that community. What I've been pondering about Hajam Kishore Singh's story since our trip is his extraordinary ability to think clearly about what made sense to him, even while steeped in communities, institutions, and cultures where most everyone around him thought otherwise. He found a way to create communities where he lived that resonated with his beliefs and flourished under his attention and care. He eventually found a few others who each on their own found that they felt similarly about the theology and philosophy they wanted to be preaching and teaching to others. And those three people joined their efforts to promote a religion which they could preach with conviction. The lingering question for me, the question that comes into the present day, is how might we here think and dream outside of our current cultural myopia? What humbling flaws in our country and mainstream American culture have been so exposed by the joint US epidemics of COVID and racism that we can hopefully acknowledge them more frankly and address them more concertedly now? These March days, I can feel spring tickling my spirit and urging me to rush ahead towards planning a normal summer, right? But before we zoom ahead into whatever the rest of this momentous year might hold, how might we create a little more space in our lives and our thoughts and our plans for reflection on all that we've learned this past year, for wonderment at all that we have managed just fine without, for thinking outside the return to normal boxes that are clamoring for us to check them? What has become more clear to you this past year that you want to hold on to? What is it now our time to boldly address where we are? As Reverend Fran and Eve beautifully read for us earlier, the word courage comes from the Latin cor, which means heart. The original use of the word courage meant to stand by one's core and connects to the belief that living from our center, our core, our heart, is what enables us to face whatever life has to offer. To encourage means to hearten, to impart strength and confidence. And so this is still our work, right? As a religious community, to encourage one another, to be bold in engaging the world around us, as well as what scares us internally, to give one another the confidence and heart to live as fully as possible in our place and in our time. Reverend Erica's meditation continues with these words. Soak them in with me for this moment before we move forward towards our closing song. With full hearts, let us affirm our relationships with one another. Let us recognize our agency and our connective power. Let us accept our responsibility to be bold and courageous. It can feel like having a meaningful impact on our shared world is so abstract and massive an undertaking that we don't know where to begin. So we begin and re-begin here in our weekly and often daily connections with one another. Sometimes it is the work of co-creating church, even in these online times, and especially in these online times, that brings us into personal connection with each other in a way that we would not be otherwise. So appreciate that the maintenance of church can be the task that brings us into heartful community with each other. Reaching out is a spiritual practice. We reach out to neighbors and those we interact with in our forays into the communities right around us, pausing and taking the time to know one another as human beings. We each and all have a connecting impulse and the power to reach out more. We each have some internal fire which we can draw upon to be more bold and courageous in our lives and our communities, just as they are, right where we are. Even as we shift towards looking ahead with new hope and energy, let us tend to that fire of clarity about what has changed, what we have learned, what we have found to be newly and deeply thankful for, what we now know we can do better. May it be so. Join me now in singing, which this song will get stuck in your head, and I hope it carries you into the rest of your day. Join me now in singing this song of appreciation for the earth on which we all live and breathe and strive and struggle, for the earth forever turning.
For the earth forever turning, for the skies for every sea, for our lives, for all we cherish, sing we our joyful song of peace. For the mountains, hills, and pastures in their silent majesty, for the stars, for all the heavens, sing we our joyful song of peace. For the sun, for rain and thunder, for the seasons harmony, for lives, for all creation, sing we our joyful praise to thee. For the world we raise our voices, for the home that gives us birth. In our joy we sing, returning home to our blue-green hills of earth.
As we bring our service to a close, let us say together our words for extinguishing the chalice. As we extinguish the flame of this chalice, may we carry its light with us into the world in the power of peace, faith, justice, and love.
For the world we raise our voices, for the home that gives us birth. In our joy we sing, returning home to our blue-green hills of earth. May it be joy and gladness, not fear or worry, that propel our actions. There are always 1,000 things that need to be fixed, yet each of us are only one, and one human, mortal one at that. Let your life hold joy. Let your soul know contentment. While there will always be more to do, listen for the beautiful noise of your life that your heart is longing to simply delight in, right here and right now. When you do leave this sacred community today and look away from your device back to the tactile world right around you, go with renewed gratitude for the beauty and comforts right where you are. Go with love in your heart, your spirit nourished by peace, your actions committed to creating greater justice in our shared world.